The morning sun peeked through the curtains of their modest two-bedroom apartment as Raj checked his phone for the 100th time. His hands trembled slightly as he read the email again, the investment offer that would change everything. Outside, the busy streets of Mumbai echoed with the usual morning chaos, but inside, his mind was surprisingly quiet. His wife Priya was still asleep, exhausted from working late at her teaching job. A job she'd taken to support his dreams of building a tech company. She had always believed in him, even when his first two startups had failed. For 5 years, she'd packed his lunch, attended every investor meeting as his cheerleader, and stayed up late helping him practice his pitches. But now, everything was different. The American investment firm had one condition: he needed to move to Silicon Valley immediately and dedicate himself completely to the company. No distractions, no family commitments. "Your wife's teaching career will hold you back," the lead investor had said during their private meeting. "We need someone who can work 20-hour days." Raj looked at their wedding photo on the wall. They were so young, so full of hope. He remembered how Priya had sold her favorite gold bangles to help him buy his first office computer. But now, those memories felt like chains holding him back from becoming what he always wanted to be: a tech billionaire. He packed his bags quietly, placing a letter on the kitchen counter. His hands shook as he wrote the last lines. "I need to do this alone. The settlement papers will arrive tomorrow. Please don't try to contact me." He knew Priya would be heartbroken, but he convinced himself this was better than asking her to give up her teaching career and move to a foreign country. The taxi was waiting downstairs. As he walked out, he heard Priya stirring in the bedroom. For a moment, he almost turned back. But then his phone buzzed, another email from the investors about the upcoming board meeting in California. Without looking back, he closed the door and stepped into the waiting taxi. What Raj didn't see was Priya standing by the bedroom window, watching him leave. She had actually been awake the whole time, listening to him pack, her tears silently falling on her wedding ring. She had always known this day might come. She had seen how his eyes changed whenever big investors were mentioned, how the warmth in them was slowly being replaced by cold ambition. The taxi disappeared around the corner, carrying away the man she had loved for 8 years. The morning sun now felt harsh against her face, and the bustling street below seemed to mock her silence. She picked up the letter with steady hands, already knowing what it would say. After all, she had watched him draft and redraft it on his computer over the past week, too afraid to confront him about it. In their storage room, hidden behind old photo albums, lay a small box containing the pregnancy test she had planned to show him that evening. Life, it seemed, had other plans. As she sat down at their small dining table, now set for one, she made a decision. She would face whatever came next with the same strength she had used to support his dreams all these years. The morning news played on their old TV, showing yet another story about a tech billionaire's success. Priya switched it off, got up, and started getting ready for her teaching job. Her students were waiting, and life, she knew, had to go on. But deep inside, a small voice whispered that this wasn't the end of their story, it was just the beginning. 2 months after Raj's departure, Priya sat in a small clinic, staring at the ultrasound screen with wide eyes. The doctor adjusted the device, squinting at the display. "Ma'am," she said slowly, "I'm seeing multiple heartbeats here." Priya's grip tightened on the examination table. "Multiple?" she whispered, her voice barely audible over the gentle hum of the clinic's air conditioner. "4," the doctor said, pointing to different spots on the screen. "You're carrying quadruplets." She paused, letting the information sink in. "This will be a high-risk pregnancy. You'll need extra care, regular checkups, and plenty of rest." On the auto rickshaw ride home, Priya's mind raced faster than the evening traffic. 4 babies. She would be a mother of 4. Her hand instinctively went to her stomach, still flat, but now holding a secret bigger than she could have imagined. At home, she opened her laptop to write an email to Raj. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. The cursor blinked mockingly at her. News articles about his success in Silicon Valley filled her social media feed. His company was now valued at millions, and pictures showed him in expensive suits, shaking hands with famous investors. She closed the laptop without writing the email. "We'll manage," she whispered to her unborn children. That night, she made 4 small entries in her diary, imagining each baby's personality. She would give them Indian names, names that carried strength and grace. The next few months tested every ounce of her resilience. Morning sickness hit her 4 times harder than a normal pregnancy. Her teaching job became increasingly challenging as her body struggled to carry 4 growing lives. But her students brought her unexpected joy. They made her paper cranes for good luck and helped her carry her books. Her neighbor, an elderly aunt everyone called Dadi, became her unexpected guardian angel. She brought over homemade food, sat with Priya during her frequent dizzy spells, and shared stories about her own journey of raising children alone after losing her husband. "Better," Daddy would say, patting Priya's growing belly. "These little ones are bringing you 4 times the blessings. Life has a funny way of balancing things." During her 6th month, while on mandatory bed rest, Priya started an online business selling handmade baby products. She would sit in bed, laptop propped on her special pregnancy pillow, researching markets and designing websites. Each small success felt like a victory not just for her, but for the 4 little fighters growing inside her. The pregnancy became the talk of the neighborhood. Women she barely knew brought her healthy snacks and advice. The local temple's priest sent special prayers. Her small apartment slowly transformed into a nest of love and community support. But nights were the hardest. Sometimes she would wake up at 3 a.m., feeling kicks from different directions, and her hand would reach for her phone to call Raj. His number was still on speed dial. She would stare at his contact photo, them laughing at their college graduation, until the screen went dark. During one particularly difficult checkup, when the doctor expressed concerns about her blood pressure, a young nurse held her hand and said, "You're the strongest person I've seen in this ward. These babies are lucky to have you as their mother." Those words became Priya's mantra. She started documenting everything: her growing belly, the ultrasound photos, the first kicks. Not for Raj, but for her children. Someday, they would ask about their father, and she would tell them a story of love, not bitterness. As her due date approached, her small business began showing profits. She hired 2 helpers to manage orders while she focused on her health. The irony wasn't lost on her. While Raj chased his billions in Silicon Valley, she was building something meaningful right from her bedroom, surrounded by love and anticipation. One evening, as she sat on her balcony watching the sunset, feeling 4 distinct movements in her belly, she realized something profound. She wasn't just carrying babies, she was carrying hope, strength, and a future brighter than any fortune could buy. The glass walls of Raj's corner office overlooked the glittering San Francisco Bay. At 40 stories up, the city looked like a toy set, with tiny cars moving along thread-like streets. His company had just hit a $10 billion valuation, making him the newest member of the Tech Billionaire Club. Yet here he was at 2 a.m., staring at an old photo on his phone. It showed him and Priya at their favorite street food stall in Mumbai, their faces smeared with pani puri juice, laughing without a care in the world. His thumb hovered over the delete button, just like it had every night for the past year. "Sir?" His assistant's voice startled him. "The Tokyo investors are waiting on the video call." Raj quickly locked his phone. "What time is it there?" "It's 6 p.m. in Tokyo, sir. But it's 2 a.m. here. Maybe you should go home and rest?" Home. His penthouse apartment with its designer furniture and automated everything hardly felt like home. He missed the creaky ceiling fan in their old Mumbai apartment, the smell of Priya's morning chai, even the noisy neighbors who played old Bollywood songs too loud. The video call went well. It always did these days. Raj had mastered the art of charming investors. His company's new artificial intelligence platform was revolutionizing the tech industry. Business magazines called him the AI King, and young entrepreneurs studied his success story. But success felt different than he'd imagined. Tonight, after the call, he found himself Googling teaching jobs in Mumbai, something he did more often than he cared to admit. He wondered if Priya still taught at the same school, if she still wore the small gold earrings he'd given her on their first anniversary. His assistant knocked again, entering with fresh coffee. She'd been with him since the early days, one of the few people who knew about Priya. She noticed the photo open on his computer screen, his old wedding photo that he tried to hide in a folder named Old Documents. "The board meeting is in 4 hours, she reminded him gently. "Should I order breakfast?" Raj nodded, then asked suddenly, "Do you think I made a mistake?" She paused at the door. Sir? Leaving everything behind. She looked at him, really looked at him. The designer suit couldn't hide his tired eyes, the weight he'd lost, the grey hairs creeping in at his temples. Only you can answer that, sir. Later that morning, during the board meeting, Raj's mind kept wandering. While presenting growth charts and profit projections, he remembered teaching Priya to make charts for her students. She'd always mixed up Excel formulas, and they'd laugh about it over midnight snacks. His phone buzzed with another achievement. His AI platform had just won a major industry award. The boardroom erupted in applause, but Raj felt strangely hollow. He looked around at the celebrating faces and realized he couldn't remember the last time he genuinely laughed. That evening, his face appeared on Times Square billboards. His social media team captured the moment, the great tech visionary against the bright New York lights. But in his hotel room, he ordered street-style Indian chaat from a local restaurant, eating it alone while watching old videos of Mumbai's rainy season. His wealth manager called with news about another successful investment. "You're now worth $12 billion, she announced excitedly. Raj thanked her politely, then spent an hour looking at rental prices in his old Mumbai neighborhood. As another dawn approached, Raj stood at his office window again. A shooting star streaked across the sky. He remembered how Priya always made him wish on shooting stars, saying they carried messages from fate. Tonight, he made a wish too, not for more success or billions, but for a chance to hear Priya's laugh one more time. 7 years had passed since that life-changing day at the clinic. Priya's small apartment now buzzed with the energy of 4 little girls, each carrying a piece of their father's spark and their mother's strength. She named them Isha, Dia, Ria, and Mia, names flowing like a melody when called together. The morning routine was organized chaos. "Isha, your glasses," Priya called out while braiding Dia's hair. Ria was helping Maya find her lost shoe under the bed. Their different personalities shone through even in these simple moments. Isha the thoughtful one, Dia the creative spirit, Ria the problem solver, and Maya the dreamer. Her online business had grown beyond baby products into a successful e-commerce platform for mothers. The living room doubled as her office after bedtime, where she would work on her laptop while surrounded by scattered toys and half-finished art projects from the girls. "Mummy, look what we made." Dia bounced into the kitchen one morning, holding up a science project. All 4 girls had inherited their father's love for technology. They had turned their bedroom into a mini lab, conducting experiments that usually ended with Priya cleaning up colorful messes. Their favorite game was Office, unknowingly mimicking the corporate world their father lived in. They would set up pretend laptops made from cardboard boxes, hold meetings with their stuffed toys, and make important phone calls on toy phones. Sometimes, watching them play, Priya caught glimpses of Raj's expressions in their focused faces. The girls knew about their father through carefully chosen stories. "Your papa is a very smart man who builds amazing things with computers," Priya would tell them during bedtime stories. She kept her tone neutral, letting them form their own thoughts. They had his picture in their room, a family photo from before he left, when dreams were still shared things. One evening, while helping with homework, Isha asked the question Priya had been preparing for. "Mummy, if Papa is so smart with computers, can't you find us on the internet?" Priya gathered all 4 onto her lap, though they barely fit anymore. "Sometimes grown-ups make complicated choices," she explained. "But that doesn't change how special you are." The girls had developed their own secret language, finishing each other's sentences and communicating with just looks. They were inseparable at school, where teachers struggled to tell them apart. But Priya knew each unique trait: Isha's thoughtful frown when reading, Dia's excited bounce when painting, Ria's determined face while solving math problems, and Maya's dreamy smile while watching butterflies. Their small home was full of love and laughter. The walls were covered with artwork, 4 versions of every drawing, each slightly different. Their weekend traditions included making science projects, baking experiments that sometimes worked, and video calls with Dadi, who had moved back to her village but remained their strongest supporter. Priya's business grew steadily, allowing her to provide well for her daughters. She had transformed their spare room into a study space with 4 small desks, each decorated according to its owner's personality. The girls spent hours there, creating inventions from household items, just like their father used to do in his early days. One day, while cleaning their study room, Priya found a letter they had written together. "Dear Papa, we know you make big computers. We made a small robot from Mummy's old phone. If you ever see it, please know it has a piece of our heart inside." That night, as Priya tucked them in, 4 pairs of eyes, all carrying Raj's curious sparkle, looked up at her. "Mummy," Moya whispered, "are we going to be inventors like Papa?" "You'll be whatever you dream of being," Priya answered, her heart full of pride and a hint of bittersweet joy. "But more importantly, you'll be kind and brave, just like you already are." The Singapore Technology Summit buzzed with energy as Raj delivered his keynote speech about artificial intelligence. The convention center was packed with industry leaders, but his mind kept drifting to the window view of Marina Bay, reminding him of Mumbai's seafront where he and Priya used to spend evenings. During the Q&A session, a familiar voice from the audience made his heart stop. "What are your thoughts on small businesses using AI for growth?" The question was simple, but the voice, he'd know it anywhere. His eyes searched the crowd, finding Priya standing confidently in the 3rd row, wearing a crisp business suit. She looked different yet the same. 7 years had added a mature grace to her features, but her eyes still held that gentle strength he remembered. Before he could process this, movement near her caught his attention. 4 identical little girls in matching blue dresses sat beside her, their tablets open as they took notes. His prepared answer about AI implementation faded from his mind. The girls looked about 7 years old, their features a perfect blend of his and Priya's. They had his nose, his focused expression when concentrating, but Priya's gentle eyes. One of them pushed her glasses up exactly the way he did. "Sir?" the moderator prompted, bringing him back to reality. Raj fumbled through his answer, his eyes constantly drawn to the 5 figures in the audience. The girls were whispering to each other, showing each other something on their tablets. Their synchronized movements, the way they leaned into each other, it was like watching a dance they'd practiced all their lives. After the session, he rushed through the crowd, but they had disappeared. Panic gripped him as he searched the conference halls. His assistant tried to remind him about his next meeting, but he waved her away. "Find out which company Priya represents," he instructed, his voice shaking. He found them in the Innovation Showcase area. The girls were demonstrating a small robot they built, attracting a crowd with their enthusiasm. Priya stood nearby, pride evident in her smile as she explained their e-commerce platform success to interested investors. The robot, he noticed, was built using parts from an old smartphone, exactly how he used to make his first prototypes. One of the girls was explaining the coding they'd used, her hands moving animatedly just like his did during presentations. Their eyes met across the room. Priya's smile faltered slightly, but she maintained her composure. The girls, engrossed in their demonstration, hadn't noticed him yet. He watched as they worked together seamlessly, one explaining, one demonstrating, one handling technical issues, and one answering questions. "They're quadruplets," he heard someone in the crowd say, "and they built this themselves." The girls beamed with pride, their smiles mirror images of each other. One of them looked up, catching his gaze. Her eyes widened with recognition, she'd seen his photo. She tapped at her sister's sleeve, and soon all 4 were staring at him, their presentations forgotten. Priya moved protectively closer to them, a hand resting on one girl's shoulder. The crowd around them sensed the tension, slowly dispersing. Raj took a step forward, then stopped, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was seeing. "Uncle, would you like to see how our robot works?" One of the girls called out innocently, not knowing who he was. Her sisters exchanged knowing looks, their expressions a mix of curiosity and caution. Raj's vision blurred with tears. 7 years. He'd missed 7 years. First steps, first words, first everything. The weight of his choices crashed down on him as he watched these beautiful, brilliant girls, his daughters, showcase their invention to the world, raised by the woman he'd left behind. His phone buzzed with messages about his next presentation, but for the first time in 7 years, the business world seemed distant and meaningless. Here, in this corner of a Singapore convention center, stood his greatest achievement, one he'd had no part in creating. The hotel cafe was quiet as Raj sat across from Priya, a table of untouched coffee between them. Through the glass walls, they could see the girls playing in the garden with his assistant, who had quickly become their favorite auntie. Isha loves science, Priya began softly. Daya can paint beautifully. Reena solves math problems meant for children twice her age. And Mia, she smiled, Maya dreams of building robots that can help people. Raj gripped his coffee cup tighter. Each revelation felt like a gentle punch to his heart. Why didn't you tell me? His voice barely a whisper. You left for billions, Priya replied, no anger in her voice, just stating a fact. I chose peace for our daughters. She pulled out her phone, showing him a folder of photos. First ultrasound, first steps, first day of school, first science fair. They came 2 months early. The doctors weren't sure they'd make it. The photos blurred as tears filled his eyes. 4 tiny babies in incubators, fighting for life. Priya, looking exhausted but determined in a hospital bed. Birthday parties with 4 identical cakes. Halloween costumes they'd made themselves, 4 little scientists. The pregnancy was difficult, she continued. Daddy helped a lot. Remember her? She still sends them sweets every month. She showed him more photos. The girls learning to walk, holding each other's hands. Their first robot, made from old toy parts. The small business she built while raising them. You've done amazing, Raj whispered, shame coloring his words. His empire felt hollow compared to what she built, not just a business, but a family full of love and brilliance. Through the window, they watched the girls testing their robot on the hotel lawn. They worked like a well-oiled machine. When one stumbled, another stepped in. Their giggles carried through the glass, pure and innocent. They know about you, Priya said. I never hid your existence. That photo in your old lab coat, it's in their room. They call you Inventor Papa when they think I'm not listening. Raj's coffee had gone cold, untouched. The robot they made, it's exactly how I used to build prototypes. They get that from you, Priya smiled sadly, along with their love for technology. But their hearts, she paused. Those they built themselves. He learned about their daily lives, how they finish each other's homework, their secret language only they understand, their dreams of building something that would change the world. How they saved their pocket money to buy parts for their inventions. How they tutored younger kids in science, refusing to take payment. Remember when we dreamed of changing the world? Priya asked softly. They're doing it, one small kindness at a time. The evening sun cast long shadows as Raj absorbed everything. Their first words, robot, was among them. Their first school play, they refused to take different roles, their habit of leaving notes for each other in binary code. There's something else you should know, Priya said, pulling out a worn notebook. They write letters to you. Every birthday, every achievement. I kept them all. She slid the notebook across the table. They believe that someday you want to read them. Raj opened the notebook with trembling hands. Childish handwriting filled the pages, drawings of robots and computers, stories about their day, dreams they wanted to share with their inventor Papa. One letter caught his eye. Dear Papa, today we won the science fair. We made a helper robot for old people. Mummy says you used to want to help people too. We hope you still do. Through the glass, he watched his daughters, these brilliant, kind souls he had never known existed. They had inherited his mind for innovation, but their mother's heart for helping others. His billions seemed meaningless compared to the wealth of love and creativity playing out before him. I've been so wrong, he whispered, closing the notebook gently. So terribly wrong. 6 months after the Singapore conference, Raj's office looked different. Gone were the cold minimalist decorations, replaced by 4 colorful drawings of robots, each signed by a different daughter. His phone's wallpaper showed all 4 girls hugging Priya, their smiles brightening his mornings. He started small, weekly video calls where he helped them with their science projects. At first, the girls were shy, calling him uncle until Priya gently explained who he really was. Their reactions varied. Isha became quiet, Dia asked endless questions, Ria analyzed him carefully, and Maya immediately showed him her latest invention. Papa, look, Muya would exclaim during their calls, holding up circuit boards and drawings. We made the robot better. The others would crowd around, each adding their part to the explanation. Their enthusiasm reminded him of his early days, when innovation was about joy, not money. Raj moved part of his company operations to Mumbai, despite his board's protests. Family comes first, he announced firmly in a meeting. The same determination that had once driven him away now pulled him back home. His first visit to their apartment was overwhelming. The walls told stories of 7 years he'd missed, height marks on the doorframe, family photos, science fair medals. The girls had converted their small balcony into a workshop, reminding him of his own childhood experiments. They need time, Priya advised when Isha remained distant. They've built their world without you. You'll have to earn your place in it. Her words carried wisdom without bitterness, teaching him patience he'd never known he needed. Slowly, things changed. He attended their school science fair, standing proudly as they demonstrated their improved helper robot. The girls had added features to help elderly people remember their medicines and make emergency calls. "We want to help people," Daya explained, "like Mummy says you used to." That hit home. Raj remembered his original dreams, using technology to make life better for others. Somewhere along the way, he'd lost that purpose. His daughters were teaching him to find it again. He started a foundation focusing on education for underprivileged children, inspired by Priya's teaching background. The girls became enthusiastic participants, teaching coding to other kids their age. Watching them share their knowledge with such joy made him realize what true success looked like. One evening, as they all sat around their small dining table, Isha finally called him Papa for the first time. The moment was simple. She was passing him a plate of rotis, but it felt more valuable than any business deal he'd ever closed. Raj learned to be a father in small steps. He discovered Isha loved stargazing, so he helped her build a small telescope. Diya taught him to appreciate art, explaining how colors could tell stories. Riya challenged him with puzzles, while Maya shared her dreams of building robots that could feel emotions. His relationship with Priya evolved too. They weren't the same people who fell in love in college, but they found new respect for each other. She showed him that real strength wasn't in bank balances, but in the courage to love unconditionally. The girls' 8th birthday party was different from their previous ones. Held in their small apartment, not some fancy venue, it was full of homemade decorations and science experiments doubling as party games. Raj helped them build mini robots as return gifts for their friends. "Papa," Moya asked during the party, "aren't you happy now?" Looking around at his daughters teaching other kids how to program their toy robots, at Priya laughing with the parents, at the life he'd almost missed, Raj felt truly rich for the first time. "Yes," he answered honestly. "I finally found what real happiness means." That night, after the party, he added his own letter to their notebook. "Dear daughters, you didn't just inherit my love for innovation, you've shown me what it means to innovate with heart. Thank you for teaching Papa that the greatest wealth isn't in bank accounts, but in the love we share. Your inventor, Papa."